Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to the final grain market blast of the week. It looks like we made it. It's finally Friday. It is Friday, the 17th of October, all day. As usual, the glamorous, the gorgeous, the goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer, will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in grain markets. But before I hand over to her good self, I will get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this podcast represents trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the wonderful, the glamorous Angie Setzer. Angie, how are you, my love?
Disgruntled. But
Why?
I'm just disgruntled.
Hold me back. Tell me who I need to beat up.
No, well, I don't think you don't wanna. I'm just frustrated. The administration, the beef comment last night, all of that stuff, like we're just kind of up in arms across the way. And so
So just on that one, because
Yeah.
when I read it yesterday, I read it through the wonderful PIQ Newswire. Of course, Trump's basically saying I can get the beef prices down, but am I being silly? Or unless he can magically pull some cows out of his bum, I don't understand. How can he do that?
Well, the thing that I'm guessing we're probably going to do is increase the imports out of Argentina of different beef trims and things like that. I am not the cattle expert in this relationship or in this business. That's Carl's gig. He grew up on a cattle operation. He's forgotten more about raising cattle and marketing cattle and all of those things than I'll ever know. I was talking to him this morning about it a bit, and that's what he said, is that the rate, the conversation, it looks like, at least to him, is it would be an increase in imports of other beef from other parts of the world.
And would this tie in with like the extra funding that the Trump administration is giving to Argentina?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely linked in some way, shape, or form. And you've seen, the administration said earlier this week that we were working on putting together a trade deal with our friends in Argentina. And you saw Rollins say yesterday that she had been in conversation with a handful of Latin American countries. Like, what frustrates me is I've said it a couple different times, like Mexico has spare crush capacity. We aren't importing feeders from Mexico, so they're importing more in the way of soybeans to crush and more corn because they have more mouths to feed. And so, when it comes down to it, what really frustrates me more than anything, and in reality, Trump's plan's going to include, he worked his magic. That's the other part that's just like, okay, thanks. We have one bright spot in this industry right now, and that is, for cattle producers, livestock producers, it's a great, margin environment for feeding animals using our grain that we have a lot of, and so we're gonna import more and some of these other things. They'd floated the heifer retention payment, and then they kind of did away with that, and and so I guess they think that they're going to encourage farmers or whatever. But when it comes down to it, the cattle cycle is always going to be slow to correct simply because it takes so long to be able to make more cattle.
Well, this is it, right? I think it's like a 2-year just to get the herd up is going to take a couple of years, right? Again, these things do grow. They are animals. It's not like we can magically.
And it's not like chicken, we're so used to chickens are 6 months. Like the cycle of, you can have a chicken ready to make more chickens in under, a handful of months, in under a year. Maybe I shouldn't say 6 months and talk like I know, because but I mean, it's a relatively quick regeneration sort of process if you lose a flock. Hogs, similar, you know what I mean? Like it's a handful of months, maybe it's about a year, but with cattle, it's almost 2 years. Just to get to where you can have a cow, have another cow. Like it's and then it takes 2 more years for that cow to be able to have a cow. Maybe you get lucky and you have twins or whatever. But
well, we can't be basing policy on this hope. Fingers crossed we get a load of twins or a couple of twins.
Like, I think he's going to figure out how we have multiples. Like, we're going to start doing, multiple pregnancy or whatever. Like, but the biggest frustration and where I'm coming from in this is as farmers right now, we're all sitting here, like you've basically come in and you've just, smashed the market as we know it. Like, and I have been a very loud, proponent or a very loud voice in this industry that has been like, wait a minute, trade is not ruined forever, because it's not. You're still seeing corn go. You're still seeing wheat go. We've got the rest of the world buying soybeans.
You've been saying that for as long as we've been doing this show.
Exactly. And so I'm not going to say that he's come in and completely destroyed trade, simply because the US has the best supply, the highest quality, the best logistics. We're willing to sell all of these things. Like,
Yeah.
he can't ruin that for the rest
Yeah.
of the world because the rest of the world needs to source supply that they can rely on. So we've got this. But what's most frustrating is it's very, very clear now, and we've known this for a while, but I tweeted this morning, he's saying the quiet part out loud, and that is everyone in this industry gets to raise their prices to help guarantee that they make a margin and satisfy their shareholder, mind you, except for the farmer.
Right.
And we're
Yeah,
quickly
exactly.
working towards indentured servitude in this industry. And so I'm a little bit disgruntled today as a result of it. And we'll see. We'll see what the
Well,
plan
I'm glad that this is a platform where you can vent,
is.
especially on a Friday.
Maybe no one wanted to hear me vent, but I
No,
just think
it's healthy. It's healthy, and if it makes you better, if it makes you feel better, I'm
right.
here for it.
I just miss the me that believed in free market. I think it was circa 2008-ish, October. She was still a bright, shining.
She still is, in my opinion.
Right. But so, news wise, we'll be seeing what the plan is with cheapening beef, and we'll see how the market reacts. To me, I don't know. I don't want to make a call because it's out of my wheelhouse. You know what I mean? But like, and I get the frustration. People are like, well, the population needs to be able to afford beef. Do we? Like, beef is a premium product. It's
Yeah.
delicious.
Well, do you know what? That's a very valid point because, you know, cheap meat is not necessarily a good thing.
And it's not a guaranteed thing, right? Like,
Well,
do I want a
exactly,
bunch of cheap
because
fat?
then it's kind of, it's reductions in husbandry
Mhm.
qualities, etc. So I would, I've always been a proponent, again, growing up back in the West Country, when in the very rural area of the UK, when I was a young whippersnapper. I've been brought up that meat you should be paying more for, and you should be paying more for the quality, and and
Yeah.
if that's what it is, then that's what it is. We can't all have steak every night. It should be a luxury sometimes.
Well, and that's yeah, and so I hate to say that because I definitely am team, I want everyone to be able to experience a lot of the same
Oh, of
thing,
course, of course.
but we don't what's an expensive. I'm not a big alcohol, you know what I mean? But like what is it? Give me an expensive wine. You know what I mean? Like, do we all
Oh,
deserve
like
that? No. You know?
yeah, I know what you mean. Like,
Yeah.
or even a nice bottle of Bollinger or something like that,
Yeah.
or an
So
Opus One.
yeah, I get it. I get every country around the world wants cheap food policy. You know what I mean, and some of these other things, but it's just one more piece of hurdle to jump over. So,
Yeah,
especially because right now, like I said, the feed side of things is one of the best sources of demand that we have. Like, I work with hog feeders. I help hog feeders find corn. It's been great over the last year where they're just like, okay, yeah, I'll give the guy an extra nickel if he needs it. I'm making money at these levels. Like,
got you, got
there's
you.
when there's money made, rising tides raise all ships. First of all, high
Yeah,
prices cure high prices. Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to go on through the cliches as long as we have to, but like,
go for it.
why do we have? But so this is one thing we're watching. Beyond that, we're really just seeing a continuation of, folks across the country really scratching their head about what the cash market is saying. You've seen a couple different large elevators, ADM, one of them at their Decatur, Illinois plant. Mind you, Illinois is supposed to have a record soybean crop. They just opened up free delayed price. And so through the end of
I did see you quote retweet that post with your lol lol lol.
well, yeah, because, that's been one of my gripes too for a hot minute here is that we had a bunch of merchandisers across the country betting on the come, expecting these massive, massive production numbers to come in. And I get it, and they all preemptively widen their basis out like crazy. I understand it. But girls, you're not supposed to do that until you have about 50 to 60% of your ownership covered. You widen it out too fast and you suddenly convince people to get creative with what they do with their crop. And that's what we've seen. Our major crushers across the country, basically soybean crushers, have improved their bid anywhere from 20 to 30 cents in places. You have the market inverted in North Dakota. Inverted in North Dakota. Remember just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how the North Dakota farmer, it was catastrophic. They
Ah,
couldn't.
yes,
But
yes, yes.
so your cash market is saying that it doesn't have enough supply to meet the current structure of demand. And yeah, we have bean piles in places. We've got beans stored in flats in places. Like, that's what the market told us to do. Like, when you can just cut a fat hog in margin by putting beans away, or for most of my growers, we were looking at 60 to 70 cents of flat price gain just by holding on to beans for a couple of months. The market did its job. Also, though, we have reduced acres that we weren't really anticipating, and we probably have a pretty significantly reduced yield overall. So you're going to see soybeans continue to be spicy. We're a couple weeks away from delivery. I'm going to guess spreads continue to perk up as well. I imagine there are a lot of bean processors and bean handlers that have pre-traded some spreads and are it's not painful. If they locked in their carry at 20 cents on the no of Jan, they can get out of it for a couple right now. There's no loss, but I do know I have been in that situation before at the elevator where you're long the front because you've pre-spread or sold into the processor and priced those bushels or whatever, and the farmer isn't selling. Then you're looking at rolling that forward and you take that hit. You gained it
Right.
on the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
time around, right? But now you're looking at losing that. So I think you'll see some more. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Nova beans continue to be stout versus the deferred bushels. And I also think you'll probably see more in the way of basis firming and things like that. Or, the spread just has to go ham until it forces the elevator to puke some bushels. But we'll see how that plays out. Corn harvest right now, the corn market really it bounced off support at the start of the week. We're back up towards the high end of the recent range. We're back up towards resistance. Spreads have been stout. They're a little looser today. We're going to get a bunch of rain across the Eastern Corn Belt this weekend and throughout next week. So things will slow down again. But for the most part, harvest is wrapped up. And I'm hearing a lot of merchandisers in the east part of the country. I say for the most part, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, most of Iowa, the Dakotas, and Minnesota, like you're still seeing corn harvest really, really rolling. But the Mid-South, Delta, places like that, like you've pretty much wrapped up. And we've watched corn basis firm, exponentially, basically. Like right now, basis is probably trading 25 to 30 cents higher into North Georgia than where it would be normally, and we're just not seeing a lot of bushels freely moving around the market. Again, get a bunch of originators, a bunch of merchandisers betting on the come and then selling, on the expectation that they were going to have too much. Like if you're managing space, you know what I mean? You've got 1,000,000 bushels and you think you're going to take in 3, you're making 2,000,000 bushels worth of additional sales ahead of time to a certain extent, like especially if you're really, really confident in your opinion,
Yeah.
which a lot of people were this year, right? Like I still remember, someone from Iowa that was like, how can you ignore surveys and crop progress numbers and NDVI data? And now Iowa is where the epicenter of disease and reduced yields are. So like we had some really mismanaged, probably physical space going into this harvest on the expectation that the farmer was caught. And now we're going to watch the commercial kind of somewhat be caught. We'll see. Harvest, corn harvest has got a couple, 3 weeks. Like we could see a pinch in space. If we don't have a pinch in space though, in the next 2 weeks, hold on to your butts because there's something in there. This will be the fifth, sixth, seventh, market that's supposedly a wash in supply that the cash market tells you it isn't. Like, are we just going to continue to ignore what physical markets are saying and just focus on the narrative, knowing full well that all of these governments want cheap food? Or are we going to start to actually pay attention to what's going on at ground level? And so I guess that's where we are for our Friday. I didn't mean to make this such a political. I feel like all I did
Do you
was
know what? Do you know what? I'm loving it because I can see how we're going to use the word passionate.
Unhinged is usually what I describe myself as.
But no, I think that's really good. And also I've learned a hell of a lot. And also I like it when we talk about, actual like the trading technicalities and the trading kind of fundamentals behind these decisions and stuff. And no, I think it's awesome. I hate to say it's awesome. Your pain is awesome. But yeah, I've really enjoyed today's show.
Anytime you hear that I'm disgruntled, you now know.
Strap in.
Yeah, strap in because she's spicy. But that's what I said. As I get older, I feel like I get more unhinged. But I honestly, at this point, like we've sat back, we've watched, we've done some, and now we're just to the point where we're punishing ourselves,
Right.
and that's crazy talk to me. Like I get it. I get that people are complaining about beef and the beef price and whatever, but like we just don't have the opportunity ever in agriculture anymore to really get ahead. Like if you had your foot on second or third already, you'll have no problem, honestly, as we go forward, as long as you don't do anything really, really stupid. But if you're trying, if you're, if you started in the batter's box or on first base in this industry at this point in time, you're hosed. And I'm not trying to say that I'm not trying to be cynical. It's like, it's
Yeah.
just,
No, I get you.
And I've presented the administration with ideas on ways to kind of stop this, and here we sit. Now we're down talking down beef. But anyway, I'll shut up now.
Well, Angie, thank you so much as ever. I hope this venting has given you a
I
bit
feel
of a.
better. I do. I do.
Well, good. That's all I'm here for. You know me. I'm just here to make you happy. But on that note, thank you so much for this week. Well, I know we've only done a couple because I was away. But listeners, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Whatever you're doing, please stay safe. Look after yourself. Have a splendid weekend, and we'll see you all on Monday.
Have a
Much
good one,
love.
guys.